Near mint condition, the home of collected editions.
That cover's so awesome.
Absolute format is the best way to own this store. Time to empty those wallets and fill those shelves. How's it going, all you minties? Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And join me today for your overview of the Batman, the Hush Saga Omnibus from DC Comics. I'm going to be talking about what exactly is collected in here and where it fits into the reading order of Batman, or at least where I'm putting it. So, let's go ahead and get started. And welcome back, everybody. So here is the book, the omnibus that was in the catalog about 3 or 4 years ago, and then they took it out of the catalog, eventually to be replaced by the Batman by Paul Dini omnibus, which I'll talk a little bit about that and compare it to this in a little bit. But first, let's take a look at this. So this is the Batman, the Hush Saga Omnibus, and it is finally out. And this is a new cover by Jim Lee featuring Batman, and then of course the big nemesis of the book, Hush. This is sort of like a wraparound cover. Then you have Batman the Hush Saga Omnibus, DC logo there, and then this pencil drawing of Batman by Jim Lee, and another piece by Jim Lee down there. And then the ISBN, little bit about the book, and some praises for the story of Hush. And I think these are all from the original Hush Saga. Prices for the Hush Saga. And the retail price of this one is $150. It is rare, not uncommon, though we have seen it before, that we do have a Batman with a white spine. Most of the time they stick to darker colors like black. But let's look underneath, like black. Of course, black is a dark color. What the hell's wrong with me? Let's look at the flaps first. So here are the flaps. On the right-hand side is the bio on the top creators in here. And then underneath the dust jacket is the art on board. So it is a black and white wraparound image. It's a penciled image of Jim Lee's Batman with Batman the Hush Saga Omnibus right there. DC logo in the back and in the spine. And then in the front is the Batman the Hush Saga Omnibus. Now, before I put this up, I'm sure I'm going to be asked, okay, where does this fit into the reading order of Batman? This one's a little bit trickier because it kind of like the Batman and Robin by Peter Tomasi and Patrick Gleason and Batman by Paul Dini. Some of it starts before Flashpoint, so before the New 52 era, and then some of it after the New 52 era. So I'm going to put it right here, right beside the Paul Dini Omnibus, because I think it makes the most sense right here. Even though Hush predates the story of No Man's Land and Grant Morrison's run on Batman. But everybody's different, so you can put it wherever you please. It's a little harder to put on the shelf because, yes, Hush appears before all that stuff, before the big crossover like the Resurrection of Ra's al Ghul or the big War Game storyline. But then the story that follows up after that is during War Games, and then after that is the Paul Dini era. So this is separated into 3 different eras, and I'll explain each one. Before I crack this open, though, I do have to say that I have to talk about Hush, and I have to talk about his identity, who he is, and how, what ties he has to Batman. So in case you have not read Hush, please go stop watching this video. Hit that like button before you leave. Stop watching this video and go and read Hush, because it is regarded by most people, not everybody, because I can't speak for everybody, as one of the best, if not the best, Batman stories out there. So I do have to talk about that particular story, not really going in depth as to how things are revealed or anything, but I do have to mention his identity and his ties to the character of Batman and who Hush is, because that it leads into the next story arcs that are collected in here. So I can't talk about those without talking about that first. All right, so everybody warned, let's go ahead and crack it open, check out this artwork, and talk about the stories collected in here and how it's mapped. Okay, let's go ahead and open this up. We have some black end sheets. And we have the Hush Saga Omnibus with another black and white penciled, not inked. The writers, and it is, like I said, split up into three different eras. You have Jeff Loeb, A.J. Lieberman, and Paul Dini. And then, of course, the artists Jim Lee, Al Barrio Nuevo, and Dustin Nguyen are the primary artists on here, with Scott Williams and Javier Bergantino and Francis Portela as the main inkers. Alex Sinclair, Brad Anderson, and John Calise, main colorists. And then the letters, of course, Richard Starkings, Clem Robbins, and Phil Balsman are the main letters here. And you do have a table of contents telling you where you're going to find each one of these. I found this to be one of the most informative Omni collections from DC in the way that they have it built. Like, you have the cover, which is a textless cover, but in the back they actually tell you the issue number, and in the table of contents they tell you where to find those particular issues and the name of the issue, what they were calling that title. But that is your table of contents, and it's separated into different story arcs like Hush, Pushback, Human Nature, The Shape of Things to Come, Payback, Heart of Hush, Faces of Evil, and then The House of Hush. Faces of Evil, which leads into the Hush Money story arc, if you're familiar with that, from Paul Dini. And it all kicks off with this little bit of, I think this is from the Wizard magazine. It was a free little page introduction, introducing you to 2 pages, sorry, to the origin of Batman by Jeff Loeb and Jim Lee. And kicking it off with, of course, Batman 608. So collected in here is Batman 608 to 619, and then 685. See, that's a bit of a jump there. Batman Gotham Knights 50 to 55, 60 to 71, and 73 and 74. Detective Comics 846 to 850 and 852. The Hush interlude from Wizard Number 0, that's where it was from. Okay. And then the Hush tales from Batman Streets of Gotham 1 through 4, 14, 16 through 21. And then the Aftermath story from Bat Hush 20th Anniversary, which was the standard edition hardcover that was released for the 20th anniversary. The book has 1,272 pages. Okay, so let's talk about the book. Why is it broken up so much? Why are there so many issues in between issues that are not collected in here? This is very similar to something like the Marvel Doctor Doom Omnibus or the Loki Omnibus, where it collects the appearances of those characters, of those villains, throughout different eras. Doctor Doom bounces anywhere from the 1960s all the way to the early aughts. Now, Loki is a little bit different because Loki's mainly Silver Age, and then there was like a Modern Age collection. And much like those two Omnis that I just mentioned, there's a lot of double dipping in here. For example, if you own the Hush hardcover, there was a deluxe edition that came out for the 15th anniversary. There's the Absolute Edition. There's the Noir Edition. There's all kinds of editions for the main story of Hush. That is collected in here. That is what kicks off this series. And then if you have the Paul Dini Omnibus, the last third of this is collected in there. Pretty much all the Streets of Gotham and all those Detective Comics I mentioned, all of that is collected in there. From the House of Hush, Hush Money to Heart of Hush, and then the House of Hush. All of that is collected in the Paul Dini Omnibus. What is new in Omnibus format is the Hush Return story that is collected in here by A.J. Lieberman, which was previously collected, not complete though, in this trade paperback, Hush Returns. And I mean, it is not complete. It skips, like, I think it goes anywhere from 50 to 55, and then it goes all the way to 66. And that's it. Like, there's just 6 issues collected in here. This is more complete. However, it's still missing some things, like the appearances of Hush during the War Games storyline, or during the Red Hood storyline. Very minor appearances that they could have done in 1 or 2 pages, but those are not collected in here. Okay, so let's talk about each era and explain what exactly it is. Hush. Hush is the story of Batman and how his villains are just becoming superpowered. Something's going on, something's messing with his brain that he can't quite figure out who's exactly pulling the strings. and his supervillains are just teaming up with each other. This is also the return of Jeff Loeb to the character, because of course he was writing the Haunted Night stories, came back to do Long Halloween, and then came back to do Dark Victory. But this time around, he was not with Tim Sell. He was joined by Jim Lee. Jim Lee, of course, had just sold Wildstorm over to DC Comics, so this was a big return of this guy that I think anybody that grew up in the 90s, 95% of us probably love Jim Lee. It's the reason why we bought so many issues of X-Men and Wildcats was Jim Lee. Well, Chris Claremont, of course. But after Claremont left, yeah, the stories weren't the greatest, but we still had that great art for a while. And then, of course, he went over to Wildcats. But this is him coming and doing a monthly title again and teaming up with Jeff Loeb. So as the story goes, Batman is severely injured, and Alfred has no choice but to call a childhood friend of Bruce Wayne's, who is now a famous surgeon, and that is Tommy Elliot. So as you read the first Hush story arc, you find out that Tommy Elliot and Bruce had known each other when they were kids. Their parents were friends. Tommy's parents got into a car crash. He ended up losing his dad, and his mom took him away. So they kind of lost touch for a while. Tommy became this famous surgeon and came in to help out Bruce Wayne during his particular injury. But also new to the game is a character that goes by the name of Hush, who wears bandages on his head, or around his face and his body. And he's the one that seems to be manipulating all the supervillains through here. And so much so that, for example, Killer Croc, he evolved him into this big lizard creature, which we've seen Killer Croc in the past, but now he's less human and more reptile. He does a lot of things in here to different characters by souping them up. There are several changes in here that happen to Batman's rogue gallery that stay in canon. Like, this affects later on, like the characters that show up through Batman. So much so that even in the post-Infinite Crisis era, the characters, the villains, stayed the same way that Jeff Loeb had rewritten them in here. So, of course, anybody that was reading this at the time was like, well, Tommy Elliot has to be Hush, right? They both came in at the same time, and Hush knows a lot about Batman and Bruce Wayne. Who else could it be? Well, as it turns out, maybe not, because the Joker's in here and he shoots Tommy Elliot, presumably killing him. And this is when Batman snaps because he's just had enough of the Joker. He has these horrible flashbacks of the Joker, shooting Barbara Gordon, what he did to Jason Todd, what he did to Sarah, Commissioner Gordon's wife. And, he almost kills him, and Commissioner Gordon is the one that stops him. So, and of course, like most mysteries in Batman, there's twists and turns. So yes, Tommy Elliot could be Hush, or maybe he's not. And the next story arc, the next era of Hush, adds more mystery to that, but I'll get there in a few. You do have the return of a particular character through here that has plagued Batman for a long time, and that leads into another story arc that Judd Winnick ended up writing. And let's go back to the twists and turns, because there was a twist as to the reason why Tommy could become Hush and start doing this. And it all has to do with Thomas Wayne saving his mother. And you can find out by reading that yourself. But that mystery gets a little more deeper, because I remember when I was reading that, I'm like, this doesn't seem like a good enough reason to become a super villain. Well, they expand on that a little bit later. All right, so let's talk about the next era, which is the Hush Returns era. This was all told through the pages of the Batman, the Gotham Knights series that was going on at the time. And you probably saw some missing issues in here. Well, I'll talk about what this is here. So this is the return of the character of Hush. This time around, it's more crime noir and whodunit type of story, and more of a Hush is here, and he's kind of taking over Gotham. He's after the Riddler for a specific reason that ties back to the original Hush story. However, the Riddler is now being protected by this guy right here, Joker. And this is where I think this story separates fans. People talk about Hush. They love it. People talk about Paul Dini's run on Batman. Love it. I've said the same thing. I think I'm the only person for years that has said, yeah, man, that Hush Return story's pretty good. And ain't been none of you that have raised your hand saying, yeah, I agree, Omar. That story's very underrated. As a matter of fact, most people, when I say that, come to my show and say, you're out your damn mind, dude. That story sucks. I always tell people to read stories for themselves and judge it for themselves, which is why I really don't do reviews. Not here, but I do reviews on Old Reader, New Reader. If you want to hear my thoughts on books, go to that segment on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On overviews, I stay neutral of the stories because, I don't want to ruin something for somebody in case they're like, oh, well, now I don't want to read it. Or in case I overhype something like Hush Returns. Do not buy this book because of Hush Returns. I will say that. Try to find a trade paperback incomplete version of it, or try to find it digitally, because it is, I think, the driving force of this omnibus for people that are completists and who love Hush, right? Because that is the only story, and it's a big chunk of this omnibus, that has never been collected in an oversized format, and is collected finally complete for the first time. But, like I said, it is regarded as one of the worst, because I mentioned on my channel, much like Avengers The Crossing, in Batman Year 2, I actually like Hush Returns. I think I know the problem, so I'm without going into spoilers or anything, I'm going to tell you why I think people don't like it, and I can completely see that. So while this is called Hush Returns, it feels less like a Hush story, more like a Joker story, and more like a Joker story to the one thing you should never go and retouch, and that is the Killing Joke, which of course Jeff Johns has also broken that rule. And that's problem number one with this that I've seen people complain. The other big thing that happens through here is that all these villains, like the Penguin and Poison Ivy, the Riddler, and even the Joker, kind of move out of Hush's way for him to become like the ruler of Gotham, which is just so not like those characters. Like, there's a new guy in town, even though he orchestrated, the original Hush series. We don't really know much about him, and it doesn't feel like those characters would step out of the way with some strange choices for their personalities and fixations to make way for this new guy. I just don't see that happening, but it still didn't bother me. I found it to be interesting, and I actually liked what he was doing with the character of the Joker, because the Joker's a mystery. We don't need to go back and reveal all those mysteries, but touching upon those mysteries and expanding on them, I was okay with. Then there's the use of Prometheus. Prometheus is a character that took out the Justice League, character created by Grant Morrison, that gets taken out pretty easy here by Green Arrow. And I remember people having an issue with the way that Lieberman wrote Green Arrow. But I think one of the most controversial things that I see people complain about, or saw whenever I was in forums years ago, is that the use of Hush through here is very minimal, but even though he plays a big part in this, behind the scenes, and then sets up the story arc later on, is that there's another twist in here that maybe he's not Tommy Elliott. Maybe Hush and Tommy are two different people. So it adds more of that mystery in here that by the time Paul Dini takes over the book, he really clears up a lot of things about the character of Hush. So there's like no questions as to who he is. The most strangest thing that you're going to find through here, though, is after issue number 55, there's War Games. And there is no one-page description as to what happened in War Games, but Hush plays a part in War Games. Now, that's not collected in omnibus format. That's only collected in 2 trade paperbacks. And then you jump back here. So there's a little bit of a time jump as Hush is taking over the city, who he's cooperating with. And a lot of people have heard of what he did with one particular character in the original Hush series, so they're approaching him for like a cure. Again, acting a little bit out of character. But that's what this big, long saga is. And honestly, it's the longest saga in the book. It's the Hush Returns saga, with him going after the Riddler, and then the Joker protecting the Riddler, and it all comes to a big climactic ending. And then we get to the third era of this omnibus, and that is the Paul Dini era of Batman, when he came back to write Batman, not in the animated series, but in the comic books, and it was right after the Infinite Crisis event, so it all took place after 1 year later. And he brings in the character of Hush in the particular storyline called The Heart of Hush. So here we have Hush coming back to Batman's life. He's been gone for a while, and he wants to hurt Batman the worst way possible. So he wants to go after his loved ones. And during this time, Batman and Catwoman have become really close. They've started a relationship off and on, but it got so close that Hush knows about this. And it all started really in the Hush the first story arc. But what he ends up doing is taking Catwoman's heart. And now Batman has to go and retrieve it. So, man, that is a dark story. Like, how do you go after somebody by going after their loved ones? And what's the worst thing you can do without killing them, right? Like, besides, I guess, torturing them. But you take her heart. Now, remember when I said I had problems, like, where do I put this on my shelf? And I decided right beside the Paul Dini Omnibus was the best place. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that some of the stories in here happen after the Flashpoint event, happen after a particular final crisis event that took Bruce Wayne out of the picture, and it put Dick Grayson under the cowl of Batman. So it was Batman was Dick Grayson during this particular time, and Robin was Damian Wayne. So that's where we get the storyline of Hush Money and the House of Hush. And what House Money or Hush Money does is Tommy Elliott has decided to wear the face of Bruce Wayne. So he's had surgery done on his face, and he is now wearing the face of Bruce Wayne and taking advantage of that by taking over the company and withdrawing from his account. And that's kind of where that focuses on. And then the House of Hush, which wraps up this omnibus, is pretty much how Dick Grayson and Damian are finally facing off against the character of Hush without the help of Bruce Wayne. But does Bruce Wayne get to come back by the end? Well, you can read it to find out exactly what happens and how all that is resolved. The very last comic that's collected in here is the 6-page extra from the 20th anniversary. So this is the first time it's been collected in an oversized format. The hardcover was standard size, and it reveals like what happened. It's called The Aftermath, so what happened after the ending of the original Hush. Let's look at the back matter. So we have the variant covers or second printing covers, the covers to the hardcover collections, the trade paperback collections, and these are the heroes and villains from 619. These are the standard size hardcovers, and these are the trades. This is Absolute Batman Hush, and then of course the Hush Omnibus here. This is the Streets of Gotham #1 variant, the 20th anniversary, the hardcover edition, and then original page art from Al Barrionuevo from the Hush Return storyline. Dustin Wynn's art here and thumbnails, and then the bio. So not a lot of extras, but some. Now, as far as the binding, 1,272 pages, and that's what your eye looks like. And as far as the paper quality, that doesn't seem as thick as because I was just looking at my Batman and Robin and my Paul Dini Omnibus. The glossy paper stock they're using isn't as thick as those. It's a little bit thinner. So you do have minimal bleed through. You see some of the frames from the opposite page. And like I said in my previous overviews, that doesn't bother everybody, but it does bother some people. The thing that I did notice with this one is that the binding is a little bit tight. I had to open this one up about 6 times, like do a proper opening for 1,272 pages. Mainly because I don't want to miss any of this art. I don't want it to get lost in that gutter. But there is minimal gutter loss, especially towards the beginning of the omnibus, where you have to hold it down like this to kind of see as much as you can of the spread pages. And there are quite a lot of spread pages, because we are talking about Jim Lee's art on Batman when he came back. So you have to hold it down just a little bit like that. But once you get towards the middle, they do get better. But that's it. That's it. That, as they say, is that. Now, all you Hush Return fans better stand up out there and raise your hand. If you're interested in this omnibus, don't forget to check out our sponsors.
If you're in Europe and you're interested in buying these books, definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices, flat shipping rate of €12 for all EU countries, emails answered within 24 hours, waltscomicshop.com, and you can use the code nearmintcon at checkout and get free shipping for all EU countries with your first order over €40. That's Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for omnis and premium collected editions in Europe. Ding!
cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget, the CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content, the page count, and build of this omnibus. Let me know in the comments down below if you are picking this up. If you have any other questions, leave your questions down below. I'm sure myself and a bunch of other of my viewers that are experts on Batman can help you out in case you're new to Batman and new to the character of Hush. But I hope I was able to answer a lot of your questions within the video. And big thank you to all our patrons for making videos like this possible. Could not be doing this without you all. So if you want to join that is in the description of the video, the link. And that's it, everyone. Stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.